They told me a woman's silence keeps the family together.
But that silence almost destroyed me.
I still remember that night. The chandelier light trembling above the dinner table, the air heavy with unspoken judgment. Every face turned toward me, but not one voice came to my defense. My husband sat there, his hands folded, eyes lowered, as if I were a stranger who had embarrassed him in public. They called it a misunderstanding, but I knew better. It wasn't a misunderstanding when Linda, my mother-in-law, looked me straight in the eye and said, "You've ruined our name, Amelia." It wasn't confusion when everyone chose to believe a lie because it protected their image. It was betrayal, dressed as family. I learned quickly that in the Brooks household, truth wasn't welcome unless it made the family look perfect.
Every smile hid a warning.
Every compliment carried a price.
And respect was reserved only for those who obeyed. But I wasn't raised to bow down to lies.
I stayed silent because I thought love and patience would earn me dignity. Instead, my silence became their weapon. They painted me as unstable, jealous, and ungrateful, all because I knew a secret that could shatter their precious reputation. That night, as their whispers filled the room, I made a quiet promise to myself. If they think silence is strength, they've never heard a woman speak her truth. They silenced me for their image, but my truth was louder than their lies. I came into the Brooks family like someone walking into a movie already halfway through, everyone smiling, everyone rehearsed, everyone sure of their lines. On my first Sunday dinner as a new daughter-in-law, the house felt warm and perfect, candles on the island, a roast in the oven, Evelyn's soft laugh floating from the living room. Linda moved through the kitchen like a director, crisp and exact.
I wanted to fit that rhythm. I wanted to belong.
"Hand me the time, Amelia," Linda said without looking up. I passed the jar, waiting for a thank you that didn't come. Ryan squeezed my shoulder, gentle, careful, not quite present. "Mom likes dinner just so," he whispered. "Let her lead."
I tried.
I set the table the way Linda liked, napkins folded like tiny boats, silverware lined up straight. Tara arrived late, cheeks glowing, phone in her hand. Everyone rose, as if a star had stepped onto the set. Evelyn smiled at her, the way grandmothers do, but I noticed the way George shifted, quiet and alert, the way men get when the room might split. "Tara, you're a vision," Linda announced. "Our pride."
No one said anything about the table I'd set. It was small. It still stung. There were family rules. We didn't argue in front of guests. We didn't expose personal matters.
We shut down anything that could ruin the family name.
I learned those lines fast.
I repeated them under my breath like a prayer I didn't choose. Respect mattered here, more than truth, more than comfort, more than me.
At reunions, I played the helpful daughter-in-law.
I plated desserts, arranged flowers, wrote little place cards. I listened to stories told 100 times and laughed in the right places. I wanted to be loved.
I wanted to earn it.
But love here seemed to belong to those who glittered on command.
Tara glittered. I learned to be quiet.
"Amelia, darling," Linda would say, brushing a crumb off the table. "Presentation is everything." "I understand," I'd answer.
She'd nod, satisfied.
"Good girl." When Sophie, my sister, visited, her eyes caught everything. She watched me move around the kitchen, the careful dance. Later, upstairs, she asked, "You okay?" "I'm fine," I said. "I just want to do it right." "Right for them," she said softly. "What about right for you?" I brushed it off.
I told myself I was building peace. I told myself respect takes time.
But time has its own sharp way of revealing balance. The weight always fell on me to bend. There was a tradition I liked, Tuesday soup nights. Evelyn told stories about her first winter in this house, the drafty windows, the way she learned to stretch $1, the neighbors who brought bread.
Those nights felt honest.
Even Linda softened. We ate, we breathed. For a few hours, I believed I belonged. Then the moments returned. The small cuts. Tara would accidentally schedule charity meetings during dinners I'd planned. Linda would adjust my dishes after I set them, tilting plates just enough to say not good enough. George stayed silent, guarding the family image like a glass wall no one could touch. Ryan tried to bridge it all, one hand holding me, the other reaching back to the family he couldn't disappoint. At the annual neighborhood brunch, Dr. Rebecca Hayes, a respected friend of the family, placed a hand on my arm. "You've brought warmth into this house," she said. Her voice was kind, but her eyes carried a shadow. I started to ask what she meant, but Linda called across the room. Rebecca, come, photos. The moment slid away. There were always photos, perfect lines, perfect smiles. I stood shoulder to shoulder with people I wanted to love, thinking, hold your breath, hold your place, hold this image. Don't be the one who ruins it. Amelia, Linda said one afternoon, sorting mail at the counter, about the charity auction, let Tara lead.
She has the eye for these things.
I've already drafted the donor notes, I said. We could review them together. Her lips pressed thin. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. I only wanted to help.
She offered a polished smile.
Help quietly.
Help quietly.
Respect, I learned, was not a shared table. It was a leash. Ryan noticed the tension, but he feared the storm more than the strain. Please, he whispered one night, don't escalate. Mom's under pressure.
The family has a lot to protect.
What about me?
I asked. You know I love you, he said, eyes down.
Just, don't make it bigger.
So I made myself smaller. I took up neat corners of rooms. I spoke in careful lines. I carried the weight of being the one who would not embarrass anyone.
And yet, humiliation found me anyway, in sideways glances, in clipped praise that stopped just before warmth. I kept thinking, if I work harder, if I smile longer, if I never slip, I'll earn respect. But respect given only to silence isn't respect. It's control dressed as grace. One evening, while clearing dishes, Evelyn touched my wrist. You did well, she said. You always do. Thank you, I whispered. She hesitated, then added, sometimes truth takes time to be seen. I looked up. What truth? Evelyn's eyes flickered toward the hallway where Linda and Tara were laughing softly. The kind that waits. The kind that refuses to be destroyed. Later that night, as the house settled and the lights softened, my phone buzzed. A message from Emily Russ, a woman who used to work with the Brooks Family Charity, blinked on my screen. I shouldn't text, but I need to talk.
It's about the accounts. It's about Tara. Please don't show anyone.
I have a secret, and I think you already feel it. I stared at the glow, my heart steady but loud, and for the first time I wondered if the unity I was chasing was just a curtain, pretty, heavy, and ready to fall. I used to believe families broke slowly, like a crack creeping across glass.
But the Brooks family didn't crack. They shattered overnight. It started with money.
It always does, doesn't it? Linda had been talking for months about updating the family trust, something about protecting legacy and rewarding loyalty. Everyone nodded, pretending to understand the legal terms. I stayed quiet, pouring coffee and smiling at the right moments. But I noticed who she looked at when she said loyalty.
It wasn't me. It was Tara.
The Brooks Charity Gala was coming up, a grand event Linda hosted every year to prove how perfect her family was. I'd been working on the donor list, sending invitations, managing volunteers. But 2 days before the event, Tara breezed in wearing a designer coat and announced, I'll handle the presentation. We don't want confusion.
Linda smiled approvingly. Good idea. Tara has the touch for these things. I opened my mouth to protest but felt Ryan's hand on my arm. Don't, he whispered.
Not now.
That not now became the cage I lived in.
During the gala, Tara stood on stage, taking credit for every bit of work I'd done. Her voice sparkled as she thanked our wonderful family team.
The audience applauded. My name never left her lips.
When I caught Linda's gaze, she smiled, slow, victorious, like she'd trained me to stay invisible. Later that night, when guests left and the house quieted, I found Tara and Linda whispering in the study. The words accounts, cover, and audit floated through the door before I heard footsteps. I backed away fast, pretending to be tidying the hallway. Eavesdropping, Amelia. Tara's voice sliced through the air. I was just. Linda appeared beside her, calm as ever. Curiosity isn't a good look on you, dear. The next morning, Ryan avoided my eyes. Mom said you were acting strange last night. Strange? I repeated. I walked by a door. She's worried you're misinterpreting things again. Again?
I said sharply.
When have I ever misinterpreted anything? He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Please, Amelia.
Don't start something.
We have enough pressure already. That's when it hit me. They'd already built the story, one where I was emotional, unstable, easily confused.
A convenient lie.
Over the next few weeks, little things began disappearing. My project notes, receipts I'd collected for charity expenses, even an email trail I'd saved. When I asked about it, Linda shrugged.
Maybe you misplaced them.
Happens to everyone. But I hadn't misplaced anything.
Someone was erasing my footprints.
Then came the humiliation. At brunch with the extended family, Linda brought up the charity mix-up, the missing donation funds that I didn't even know were missing.
She looked directly at me.
I'm sure Amelia didn't mean to cause confusion. These things can happen when you're overwhelmed. Laughter rippled around the table, soft and poisonous.
I felt my cheeks burn.
I had nothing to do with that, I said. Tara tilted her head, smiling sweetly. Of course you didn't, honey. But maybe next time, double-check your records. Ryan stayed silent, eyes fixed on his plate. That silence hurt more than anything. Later, in the kitchen, I whispered, "You know I didn't do it."
He sighed. I just need you to stay calm.
Mom's under a microscope. The audit's happening, and she can't afford any scenes. Scenes,
I said, voice trembling.
She's turning everyone against me.
Just let it go, he said softly.
For now.
For now. Again.
That night, I searched the family office for answers. Drawers, folders, cabinets. I found an envelope marked confidential, trust records. Inside were financial summaries and a letter from the bank addressed to Mrs. Linda Brooks, referencing irregular withdrawals from the charity fund by Tara Brooks.
My pulse pounded.
There it was, the truth they buried. The next morning, I confronted Ryan quietly in our room. Your cousin took the money, not me. There's proof.
He froze.
Where did you get that?
It doesn't matter where.
It's true.
His voice rose.
You shouldn't have been snooping. Do you realize what you've done? What I've done?
I snapped.
I didn't steal.
I didn't lie.
I didn't humiliate anyone. He stepped back, face pale. Mom said this would happen. That you'd try to ruin the family's name.
That broke something inside me.
I stared at the man who once promised to protect me, and I saw nothing but fear. Fear of his mother, of the truth, of me. Ryan, I whispered, you'd rather believe her lies than face what's real. Amelia, please, he said. Don't destroy everything. I looked at him, feeling the last trace of warmth leave my chest. Maybe everything deserves to be destroyed.
Before I could say more, Linda appeared in the doorway, arms crossed. We'll talk later, Amelia. For now, I think you need some space. Take a few days away. Clear your head.
She said it sweetly, like a threat covered in sugar. I left that night, my hands shaking, my heart heavy, but I took the envelope with me. It's strange how cruelty rarely begins with shouting. It starts quietly, with glances, whispers, and the kind of silence that speaks louder than words. When I returned to the Brooks house after taking some space, the air felt different.
Colder.
My place at the table had shifted, literally. My seat had been moved down, near the end, next to the grandchildren. Linda claimed it was for better balance, but everyone understood the symbolism. Ryan tried to make small talk, pretending everything was fine. You look rested, he said. I'm not, I replied softly. But thank you for pretending. He looked away, his fork clinking against the plate like a metronome counting down my patience. At first, they acted as though I didn't exist. My opinions were brushed aside. My presence, tolerated but unwanted. I'd walk into a room, and conversations would halt, just long enough for me to feel it. Even Evelyn, who once defended me quietly, now watched with tired eyes, as if afraid that kindness might cost her, too. Then came the anniversary party, the Brooks' biggest event of the year.
The entire town showed up.
Polished cars, golden lights, champagne laughter. I wore the dress Ryan once said made me look like the woman he fell in love with.
That night, he didn't even glance at me.
Linda was radiant, greeting everyone like royalty. Tara floated around her, smiling too sweetly for someone who'd stolen from a charity. The irony twisted in my stomach. When the speeches began, I expected at least a mention, a thank you for the years I'd supported the family events, the foundation work. Instead, Linda took the microphone and smiled that perfect, poisonous smile. This family, she said, has survived because we trust each other, because we don't let outside noise ruin what we've built.
The crowd clapped.
Ryan smiled, Tara smirked, and I sat frozen. I was the noise. I was the outsider. Then, in front of everyone, Linda added, "We've had challenges, of course.
Misunderstandings.
But sometimes love means forgiving even the confused among us."
Soft laughter rippled across the room. I felt the heat rise up my neck.
I stood up slowly, trying to steady my breathing. "Is that what you call lies now?"
I said. My voice was quiet, but the microphone caught it. The room went still.
Linda blinked, feigning surprise. "Amelia, dear, I think you've misunderstood."
"No," I interrupted.
"I understood perfectly." Ryan was on his feet in seconds, his face pale.
"Amelia, sit down. Please." "Why?" I asked. "You're all comfortable standing on lies. Why shouldn't I stand on the truth?" The tension cracked like glass. Gasps, murmurs, embarrassed smiles. Linda's lips tightened, and for a second, the polished mask slipped. I saw fear there, just a flicker, before she turned away. "Let's all take a breath," George said, his voice low and calm. "Not here, not tonight." Linda exhaled through her nose. "You're right, dear." It's her nerves again. Her tone made me sound like a fragile child. I wanted to scream. Instead, I walked out, past the polished floors, the fake smiles, the photographers. Outside, the air was cold and honest. I leaned against the railing, gripping it so hard my knuckles turned white. The humiliation burned deep, but beneath it, something sharper began to take shape. Not despair. Not defeat. Something else. Anger. I thought of the envelope hidden in my suitcase, the proof that could expose them all. I told myself I needed to protect Ryan, that destroying his family would destroy him. But that night, under those glittering lights, I realized he wasn't mine to protect anymore. He'd already chosen which side he stood on. Later that week, the cruelty became open. Tara accidentally spilled red wine on one of my blouses. Linda forgot to tell me about family meetings. Even George began avoiding me, muttering that we don't need more noise right now. When the neighbors came over for brunch, Linda introduced Tara as the one who manages our foundation now, our most responsible family member. The word responsible hung in the air like a knife. Everyone laughed. Everyone except Evelyn, who looked at me with quiet sorrow. I smiled politely, but my hands trembled beneath the table. After the guests left, I tried to talk to Ryan again. "You saw what she did," I said. "How long will you let this go on?" He rubbed his forehead. "Amelia, please, just stop. I can't handle this anymore." "You can't handle me telling the truth." "No," he whispered. "I can't handle choosing between you and my family." That was the moment I knew he already had. That night, I sat in the dark, listening to the house creak, every sound a memory of the woman I'd tried to be. The walls that once held love now held secrets. My reflection in the window looked like a stranger, eyes hollow, lips pressed tight, dignity fraying but not gone. "I see you," I whispered to myself. "And soon, so will they." A few days later, a new invitation arrived, the Brooks Foundation charity dinner. My name wasn't on the planning committee list. But when I opened the envelope, I noticed something chilling. The guest of honor was Dr. Rebecca Hayes. The woman who once warned me, the one whose letter had exposed everything. Why would they invite her now? To silence her? To control her? Betrayal doesn't always explode. Sometimes it unfolds in slow motion, and you only realize what's happened after it's too late to breathe. The night of the Brooks Foundation charity dinner felt colder than winter. Every chandelier sparkled brighter than usual, as if mocking me. Linda had spared no expense: silk drapes, gold-etched menus, a string quartet humming in the corner. The family was radiant again, their image restored. And yet, I knew the rot underneath their smiles. I walked in wearing black, simple, silent, defiant. Ryan greeted guests by the entrance but didn't look at me. He hadn't for days. We shared a house, but not a life anymore. "Amelia," Linda said sweetly when she saw me. "How lovely you could make it." Her tone made lovely sound like uninvited. "I wouldn't miss the celebration," I replied. "After all, it's about integrity and trust, isn't it?" A flicker crossed her face, but she recovered fast. "Exactly. Which is why tonight will be so special." I didn't yet know how special she meant. The speeches began.
Guests clapped, cameras flashed, champagne poured. I sat quietly at a corner table, my heart steady but cautious. Then Linda took the stage, her pearls glimmering, her voice honeyed with charm. Tonight, she began, we celebrate family, community, and the values that keep us strong. But sometimes, those values are tested.
She paused just long enough for every head to turn toward me.
Over the past few months, she continued, there have been misunderstandings regarding our charity accounts. But after a careful internal review, we've identified where things went wrong.
My stomach dropped. She couldn't. Her eyes found mine.
It seems a trusted member of our family misplaced funds and damaged our reputation. We have chosen to handle it privately, out of compassion.
Gasps spread through the crowd. People glanced between us.
Ryan's face was stone. Tara looked down, pretending to be shocked.
And I couldn't breathe.
Linda, I said, standing up, my voice trembling but loud.
That's a lie.
Amelia, she sighed, the picture of patience, please.
This isn't the time.
You're framing me.
I said, louder now.
You know Tara took that money.
The murmurs turned into whispers. Someone pulled out a phone. Cameras clicked.
Ryan's hand tightened into a fist at his side.
He looked like he wanted to disappear.
Amelia, stop it. Stop what?
I cried.
Telling the truth.
Linda's tone sharpened.
Enough. You're embarrassing yourself, and this family.
That sentence cut deeper than any blade. This family. As if I was no longer part of it.
I felt the room spin, faces blurring, music fading. It was Evelyn's voice that broke through, trembling and soft. Linda, maybe not here.
Linda ignored her.
We've decided, she announced, turning to the audience, to make a change in our family trust. Going forward, the foundation and estate will remain under the Brooks name, our children by birth. The words echoed like a verdict. I'd been erased. People started clapping, polite, confused, complicit. That sound, that hollow applause, drowned out my heartbeat. I stood frozen as they celebrated my destruction. When the applause faded, I walked out. Not fast, not angry, just numb.
The night air hit me like glass. Outside, by the parking lot lights, Ryan followed me.
Amelia, please, you need to stop fighting her.
I turned. She just humiliated me in front of everyone.
Do you even hear yourself? She's protecting the family, he said weakly. I was family.
He looked down. You made it hard to be. That was it. The final betrayal.
I felt something inside me collapse, the last fragile thread of loyalty snapping.
You watched them destroy me, Ryan. And you said nothing.
His eyes shimmered with guilt, but guilt wasn't love. You brought this on yourself. No, I whispered, stepping closer.
You all did. And you'll regret it.
He opened his mouth, but I was already walking away. The sound of my heels on concrete was the only thing keeping me from screaming.
I drove with shaking hands.
Every mile away from that house felt like shedding skin, painful, but necessary. When I reached my sister Sophie's apartment, I sat in the car for 10 minutes before I could speak.
She opened the door and saw my face.
Oh my God, Amelia, what happened?
They destroyed me, I said simply.
That night, I didn't cry.
I didn't rage.
I sat on her couch, replaying every moment, every smile, every warning I'd ignored. How they had taken my name, my work, my dignity, and turned it into their shield.
Sophie made tea and sat beside me.
You still have the documents?
I nodded slowly.
Yes.
Then it's not over, she said.
Her words hung between us, soft but sharp, like the first spark before a fire. For the first time in weeks, I felt something shift inside me. Not hope, not relief, something colder, stronger.
Clarity. I realized that night that I wasn't broken.
I'd been tested. They'd taken everything except the one thing they couldn't touch, the truth.
Linda believed humiliation would silence me.
Ryan believed I'd beg for forgiveness. They both underestimated the quiet woman who'd learned how to survive their walls of pride. As dawn crept through the window, I looked out at the city, awake, alive, merciless, and whispered to myself, I won't let them bury me again. I opened the drawer beside Sophie's couch and pulled out the folder I'd kept hidden since the day I left, the bank letter, Rebecca's statement, Tara's forged signatures. Proof that could end their empire of lies. For a long time, I just stared at it, that thin stack of papers that had cost me my marriage, my respect, my peace. Then, slowly, I smiled. A small, dangerous smile. They wanted me silent, I murmured. But they taught me how to speak with evidence.
The fear was gone.
The heartbreak hardened into resolve. Because when a woman loses everything, she stops begging for respect. She starts taking it back.
That night, I didn't plan revenge.
I simply promised myself one thing. The next time they said my name, it would be in shame, not pity. For weeks after they erased me, I lived in a fog of small tasks, changing locks, hiding the envelope deeper in my bag, answering Sophie's questions with clipped honesty.
Little by little, the fog thinned. The rawness dulled into a cold focus.
Pain sharpened into purpose. I stopped asking how I could survive what they had done and started asking how I could make it impossible for them to do it again.
I reclaimed small things first.
I rented a tiny apartment with one window that looked out onto the street where no one knew my name. I set up a stack of folders on the kitchen table and labeled them with methodical, furious neatness. Financials, witnesses, legal.
Organization felt like armor.
Every paper I touched, bank letters, emails from Emily Ross, Dr. Rebecca Hayes's hesitant note, became a brick in the wall I was building against them.
Sophie moved in for a week to help.
She cooked, she held the camera when I recorded myself reading the timeline, and she tapped her foot impatiently when I hesitated. "You're not the same quiet Amelia anymore," she said one night, handing me a steaming mug.
"You're smarter. Use that."
"I don't want to hurt anyone," I whispered. "Then make sure the hurting is honest," she replied.
I needed allies who could be easily silenced.
Dr. Rebecca Hayes agreed to meet in secret. She was terrified at first, her career, her friendships, everything on the line. But seeing me standing there, steady, changed something in her. "I remember the day I found the ledgers," she said, voice small. "I thought I could protect the family by looking the other way. I was wrong." She handed me a folded statement, inked and sworn, that would stand up in court.
"I'll sign, publicly, if you need me to," she added.
Emily Russ, the former charity employee, became my first whistleblower. She'd been quiet for months, terrified of retaliation, but when I offered to protect her identity and to help her get legal counsel, she exhaled like someone shedding a heavy coat. "I saw the transfers," she said, eyes raw. "I was told to file it as an expense. I didn't know who to trust." She gave me screenshots, dates, names. Every small piece clicked together into a map I could follow. Clara Evans, the attorney I'd been too proud to contact before, listened without judgment. "This is messy but solid," she said, leafing through the folder. "If we move carefully, civil suit and a criminal referral, we can force discovery.
But you need to be prepared for fallout."
"What kind of fallout?" I asked. "Smear campaigns, counter-accusations, family pressure. They'll try to make you the villain again."
Her eyes pierced mine.
"Are you ready for that?" I thought of their faces at the gala, the hollow applause, the way Ryan had looked away.
"I think so," I said. The plan wasn't just legal. It was surgical.
I would not scream into the night or stage a melodramatic scene. I would build an unassailable case, time-stamped bank transfers, signed admissions, sworn statements, and a trail small enough to fit inside a sealed folder yet public enough to rupture their carefully curated life. I would use the Brooks Foundation dinner, their altar of image, as the place their house of cards fell.
It would be ironic and clean.
But there were risks. Tara could flee. Linda could destroy Rebecca's career before she testified. Ryan could be further alienated, pushed into their arms.
The thought of all that made my chest tighten.
I had to prepare for personal cost, losing friends, being slandered, maybe even legal countersuits. I wrote lists titled risks, contingencies, backup witnesses. I rehearsed statements in the mirror until my voice sounded steady. I recorded videos, time-stamped confessions of what I knew and when I knew it, stored copies with trusted lawyers, and emailed encrypted files to Sophie and Clara. Emotionally, it was harder. There were nights the ache returned, a raw hunger for the life I'd expected. I caught myself imagining Ryan standing with me, the two of us against them. Then I would wake up and remember the way he had watched it happen and done nothing. That image hardened my resolve. If he chose their silence over my truth, then his choice would be part of the story I told the world.
I practiced restraint.
Each interaction with the family became a reconnaissance mission. I returned calls from Linda with politeness that felt like poison. I sat at charity meetings only when I had to, smiling so they'd never know I was preparing their undoing. I learned how to make patients look like weakness and to let them underestimate me. Under their gaze, I collected their small slips, the casual admissions, the offhand mentions of audits and fixes, and I logged them. One afternoon, while copying records at the library, careful not to use my home computer, I felt a surge of something I hadn't allowed myself in months, a grim satisfaction.
The folder I was assembling was complete enough to start a legal domino effect.
I could see the sequence. Evidence leads to subpoena, subpoena leads to testimony, testimony shreds the narrative they'd sold for years. Then the press.
Then the town.
Then, possibly, prison doors swinging closed on people who thought themselves untouchable.
Still, doubt lingered like a shadow.
What if the judge dismissed it? What if Rebecca recanted under pressure? What if Tara vanished with all the proof? The stakes were high. If I failed, I would be nothing but a woman who had tried and been broken further. Sophie found me staring at the stack of folders one night and asked, "Do you ever wonder if you should walk away?" I looked at her, into the tremor in her voice, and felt the steel edge of my determination. "Walking away is what they want," I said. "I won't give them that victory." The charity dinner was 2 nights away. The city buzzed with the promise of another flawless event. Inside my small apartment, I arranged the final papers into an envelope labeled "Do Not Open." I slid it into my bag, checked my phone for the secure messages, and breathed. Outside, the world continued as if nothing had happened. Inside me, everything was about to. The Brooks Foundation's annual dinner glowed like a coronation. Chandeliers shimmered over polished marble, cameras flashed, and laughter ricocheted off the walls like a weapon. Every seat at the long table was perfectly arranged, except the one left open beside Ryan. My name wasn't on the list, but I walked in anyway. I could feel the ripple run through the room, heads turning, whispers spreading. Linda's smile froze mid-sentence as I crossed the floor, heels echoing like gunfire on marble.
"Amelia," she said, her voice honey-sweet.
"This is a private event." "Private?"
I replied.
"Interesting choice of word, considering how public your lies have been."
A hush fell. The quartet stopped playing. Even the air held its breath. Ryan stood abruptly.
"Amelia, please, this isn't the time."
"Oh,
I think it's exactly the time," I said. I walked to the center of the hall, reached into my bag, and laid the envelope on the tablecloth like a blade. "You wanted a celebration," I said, "so let's celebrate the truth."
Linda's face hardened.
"Security."
"No one moves," I said firmly.
"Because if I'm escorted out, these files go straight to the press." A flicker of fear crossed her face.
I turned to the guests.
"You've all donated to the Brooks Foundation, trusted this family to help others.
But the money never reached the shelters or the schools.
It went somewhere else." Tara's fork clattered onto her plate. "She's lying."
"Am I?"
I opened the folder, pulling out a printed statement. "Here's your signature on a transfer to your personal account.
$50,000.
And here, another 50, approved by Linda Brooks herself."
Gasps spread through the hall.
People leaned forward, phones rising, recording. "Linda," I continued, "you called me unstable. You erased me from your family to protect your image. Tell them now, was it worth it?" Her face drained of color. "You don't understand the damage you're causing." I met her gaze, steady and cold.
"No, Linda."
"I understand it perfectly." Dr. Rebecca Hayes rose from her seat at the end of the table. Her voice trembled but carried clear across the hall. "Everything she's saying is true."
I signed those reports under pressure.
The foundation's funds were misused, and when Amelia found out, they tried to silence her. The room erupted, shock, murmurs, flashes.
Reporters moved closer.
Ryan ran a hand through his hair, pale and shaken. "Mom, is this true?" Linda turned to him, desperate now.
"Don't you dare take her side." "Answer me," he said quietly.
"Is it true?"
Silence. Tara stood, trembling. "I only did what you told me."
"You said it would be fixed before anyone noticed."
The hall went still again. Linda's eyes widened in disbelief. "You fool." Their voices clashed like broken glass.
The perfect Brooks image shattered right there in front of everyone, mother and niece arguing, guests watching, cameras flashing. I stepped back, letting the chaos unfold. For the first time, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel afraid. Ryan looked at me, eyes wet. You planned this? Yes, I said. And I told you the truth before any of them. You just didn't listen. He swallowed hard. I was protecting my family. So was I. The board members of the foundation, people who once whispered gossip about me, stood and started murmuring about legal actions. Reporters cornered Dr. Hayes. Guests backed away from Linda as if guilt were contagious. George Brooks rose slowly, his voice trembling. Enough. This ends now. Linda turned on him. You knew everything. You signed those checks. He looked around at the stunned faces and then at me. I wanted to protect our name. But it was never my name that mattered. It was hers. His hand shook as he pointed at me. You destroyed her for telling the truth. Linda staggered, speechless. The room fell into eerie silence. I could hear my own breathing, the faint hum of the air vents, the soft click of a camera somewhere capturing the final frame of a legacy collapsing. I didn't come here for revenge, I said finally, my voice calm and steady. I came for respect, for myself, and for every woman who's been told to keep quiet for the sake of someone else's image. I gathered the folder, turned toward the exit, and as I walked away, the first flash of police lights painted the glass doors red and blue. Mrs. Brooks, a voice called. It was one of the officers. We have a warrant for financial investigation. Linda's hand went to her mouth. Tara whispered something frantic. Ryan stared at the ground. I paused by the door, looking back just once. You taught me silence, Linda, but I learned how powerful truth sounds when it finally speaks. Then I walked out, past the stunned guests, past the flashing lights, into the night that no longer felt cold. The sound of chaos behind me faded into something that almost felt like peace. The morning after the dinner was eerily quiet. The Brooks mansion, once a palace of noise and control, now stood hollow, its gates closed, reporters swarming outside like bees over spilled honey. The same town that once bowed to the Brooks name now whispered it with disgust. I didn't watch the news. I didn't need to. The silence from them told me enough. Linda's face was everywhere. Headlines, news tickers, press conferences. Charity fraud scandal. Brooks family under investigation. The woman who taught me that silence was dignity now hid from the noise of her own downfall. Tara had fled town. George's company stocks plummeted overnight. And Ryan, he called once. I let it ring. I wasn't angry anymore. I was simply done. I spent the next few days in my apartment, the same one where I'd built my case piece by piece. It felt different now, lighter, freer. Sophie visited every morning with coffee and that proud, sisterly grin. You did it, she said softly. No, I answered. Truth did. There was a strange peace in the aftermath. My name, once dragged through every whisper and rumor, was now spoken with respect. People stopped me on the street. You were brave, they said. But bravery wasn't what I felt. It was exhaustion. It was release. A week later, Evelyn came to see me. She looked frailer, smaller, but her eyes still carried that quiet wisdom. She took my hand in both of hers. I told you truth waits, she said. And it spoke, I replied. Her lips trembled into a smile. It spoke beautifully, child. We sat in silence for a while, the kind of silence that doesn't suffocate but heals. Then she said, they'll try to rebuild. People like Linda always do. But their image will never look the same again. I don't want revenge anymore, I whispered. I just wanted to breathe without guilt. And now you can. That night, I walked to the park near my apartment. The air smelled like rain, the streetlights painting long silver lines across the pavement. I watched the city move around me, people laughing, cars rushing, life continuing. And I realized that justice doesn't come with applause. It comes with quiet, the kind of quiet where your heart finally feels safe inside your chest again. Ryan sent another message. I never wanted it to end this way. I read it twice, then deleted it. Some doors aren't meant to be reopened, no matter how familiar the handle feels. Because love that requires silence isn't love. It's control dressed as loyalty. The Brooks family faced their reckoning in court. The evidence I'd gathered became headlines, testimonies, public apologies. Linda stood there, no pearls, no pride, just a trembling voice saying she made mistakes. But dignity doesn't come from apology after exposure. It comes from choosing truth before it's convenient.
And that was a language she never learned.
When the verdict came months later, I didn't attend the hearing. I simply stood by the same window where I'd once felt invisible and whispered, "It's over."
But the truth is, it wasn't just over. It was rebirth. I began working with a small nonprofit helping women silenced by family or power.
Every time I heard their stories, I saw echoes of myself. Not the broken woman they tried to erase, but the one who refused to stay quiet. And that made all the suffering make sense. One afternoon, a young volunteer asked me, "How did you find the courage to face them?"
I smiled faintly. "Courage isn't loud," I said.
"It's what's left after everything else is taken from you." That line stayed with her, and with me,
because that was the truth of it all. I hadn't won because I fought louder.
I'd won because I refused to be silent when silence became injustice. Now, when I think of the Brooks family, I don't think of pain.
I think of lessons.
They taught me that reputation built on deceit is just paper, easily burned, easily scattered. But dignity?
That's carved into the soul. No one can steal it unless you hand it over.
So I keep my silence now, not out of fear, but out of peace. The kind of silence that comes after a storm, when the sky is bruised but honest. They tried to bury me in shame. I whisper sometimes when I pass their old house, but they didn't know I was the seed.
The world moves on. So do I.
But I carry one truth with me wherever I go: respect doesn't come from family names or perfect smiles. It comes from standing up for yourself when everyone else sits down. And that, I've learned, is the purest kind of justice, quiet, lasting, and mine.